Mom smirked and said, "Watch this before dumping coffee on me at family brunch. You're nothing but selfish garbage." My mother, Angela, shrieked across the rooftop terrace of the Sapphire Hotel. The ceramic mug tipped in her hand, and a second later, the heat struck. Fresh, boiling coffee cascaded over my scalp, streaked down my neck, and soaked straight through my faded gray hoodie. The burn was instant, brutal, stealing the air from my lungs. But worse than the pain was what came after. Laughter. Christopher and Amanda already had their phones up, cameras rolling. Tiny red recording dots blinked like predators' eyes. I sat frozen, coffee dripping from my lashes, heat crawling down my spine, and understood something with chilling certainty. This wasn't a bridge burned. It was a bridge obliterated. I rose slowly. I didn't wipe my face. I didn't look at my mother, her chest rising and falling dramatically, as if her rage had exhausted her. I simply turned and walked toward the hotel restroom, my boots striking the marble floor in calm, deliberate clicks. Inside, I locked the door and leaned over the sink. My reflection looked back at me, hair plastered to my forehead, skin along my hairline and throat already reddening, threatening to blister. A scream pressed against my throat, wild and desperate. I wanted to explode, to storm back outside, to flip the table, send their polished plates crashing, tear through their perfect little performance. I wanted them to feel the burn. But when I met my own eyes in the mirror, something stopped me. They weren't glassy with tears. They were ice. If I yelled, they'd have their viral clip. If I cried, they'd savor it. Chaos was their oxygen. My mother fed on control and appearances. My siblings craved attention like addicts. They wanted a spectacle because a spectacle meant I still cared. It meant I was still participating in their twisted little show. Silence, though. Silence is different. Silence forces monsters to hear themselves. I pressed paper towels against my neck, wincing as the tender skin protested. I kept my expression blank. Not one crack, not one frame of weakness for their footage. When I returned to the terrace, the laughter had faded, replaced by a tense, crackling quiet. Christopher still held his phone. Amanda's thumbs flew across her screen, probably crafting the perfect caption. Angela stood stiffly, arms folded, waiting for the apology she believed was owed to her. I didn't sit. I slipped my wallet from my damp pocket and pulled out 4 crisp $20 bills, $80. My portion of a breakfast I never touched. I laid the money neatly on the white tablecloth, right beside the empty coffee pot. And I said nothing. I straightened the bills carefully, pressing each corner flat against the tablecloth like I was sealing a contract. Then I turned and walked away. "That's right, run," Christopher shouted after me. "Go cry in your truck." I didn't slow down. I didn't glance back. The quiet I left behind was thicker than any argument. It wasn't retreat. It was finality. The sound of a vault door swinging shut and locking from the inside. They thought the person holding the camera held the power. What they didn't understand was that they just recorded evidence. I slid into my 10-year-old Subaru, the faint scent of old coffee lingering in the upholstery. My hands shook as I started the engine, not from fear, but from the sharp drop after adrenaline burns out. I pulled onto the highway, letting distance stretch between me and the people who happened to share my DNA. The whole explosion had started over something laughably small. Before breakfast even arrived, Christopher had leaned in close, lowering his voice like we were discussing state secrets. He needed $50,000. An investment opportunity, he'd called it. Inventory for his luxury watch dealership. Just a bridge loan, he'd said, flashing a grin that showed more anxiety than confidence. "You've got great credit. Throw it on a card." He assumed I was still the struggling freelance coder living in a cabin because I couldn't afford the city. He didn't know that 3 weeks ago I'd sold my AI safety startup, SafeMine, to Google DeepMind for $110 million. He didn't know my net worth now hovered around $250 million. To him, I was the broke sibling who never quite made it. When I declined, calmly, politely, the mask slipped. "Selfish," he spat. "Mom bankrolls everything and you can't even help once?" That was the real issue. Not the money. Control. My refusal shattered their narrative. My family specialized in curated wealth. Christopher drove a leased Range Rover he was behind on. Amanda called herself a lifestyle coach, while living in a condo funded by my parents' shrinking retirement account. Angela cycled designer outfits bought secondhand and returned after wearing. Their lives were liabilities wrapped in luxury packaging. I glanced down at my thrifted hoodie, still stained and stiff with dried coffee. I owned my car outright. I owned my cabin. I owned the patents to my work. And as of 3 weeks ago, I owned enough capital to purchase everything they were pretending to be. That was what unsettled them. Not poverty. Freedom. The ability to say no without flinching. They were suffocating under payments and perception. I stood on solid ground, owing no one anything. My scalp pulsed, dragging me back to the present. I headed toward urgent care, already compartmentalizing. Part of me, the daughter part, wanted to grieve the mother I never really had. The other part, the founder, the strategist, was mentally outlining a police report. They believed they'd put me back in my place. They were about to discover mine. This wasn't family drama anymore. It was a power move. And I don't lose negotiations. Later, in my apartment, silence settled around me. The refrigerator hummed. Burn spray hissed as I coated my scalp. In the mirror, the damage was undeniable. A swelling blister behind my left ear. Angry red skin along my hairline. I didn't look away. I wanted the image etched into memory. This is what $50,000 of no cost. My phone lit up on the bathroom counter. Once. Then again. Then it began vibrating nonstop, the buzz crawling across the surface like something alive. I dried my hands and grabbed my phone. No apology. No missed calls from my mother. Just a notification from TikTok. Someone had tagged an old account I barely touched anymore. I opened the app, and there was Christopher's face, smirking beneath a soft filter, filling my screen. The video played. There I was at the terrace table, head lowered, coffee dripping from my chin while my mother's voice shrieked in the background. The frame froze for a second as bold yellow text flashed across it. When your broke sister tries to ruin brunch, taking out the trash. I scrolled. The comments were exactly what he'd hoped for. She looks like a drowned rat. Maybe get a job instead of mooching. Deserved. Amanda had reposted it to her Instagram story with a crying laughing emoji and the caption, "Karma is served hot." I placed the phone face down on the counter. They were celebrating, riding the high of notifications, mistaking engagement for victory. In their world, likes equaled leverage. They thought they'd finished the narrative, that this was the final scene where the embarrassing sibling gets discarded, and the successful family returns to sipping mimosas. They didn't understand something fundamental about the internet. Context is currency, and markets correct themselves. I didn't report the video. I didn't comment. I didn't react. Instead, I took screenshots. The post. The caption. The timestamps. The comment thread. I transferred them into a folder on my encrypted drive labeled Evidence. Then I went to the kitchen and made tea. Chamomile. Not coffee. Never coffee again. I sat by the window of my cabin and watched the valley below, letting the algorithm do what it always does. Surface patterns. Connect dots. Amplify truth once enough data exists. By Monday morning, the pressure had shifted. It felt like the stillness before a storm breaks. I was in my home office, a converted bedroom overlooking the trees, reviewing code for a new neural network architecture, when my personal phone rang. Elena, my head of PR. Ava, she said, tension threading her voice. Have you checked Twitter? I saw TikTok, I replied, pulling up a terminal window. It jumped platforms, she said. Tech Twitter found it about an hour ago. One of our former interns recognized you. It's at 4 million views and accelerating. I opened Twitter on my second monitor. She was right. The hashtag #SafeMine was trending. At the top of the feed was a split-screen image. On one side, a polished cover photo of me from Wired, composed, professional. On the other, A grainy screenshot from Christopher's video. Me drenched in coffee, head bowed. The caption read, "This family assaulted one of the most influential women in AI because she wouldn't loan them $50,000. They have no idea she's worth 9 figures." The replies were a landslide. "That's Angela Mercer. She's on the Arts Council board. Absolutely vile. Wait, the brother sells watches on commission? And he's mocking a self-made founder? The math is not matching." Someone had already tracked down Christopher's dealership. Another user was dissecting Amanda's lifestyle coaching brand. The internet had done what it does best. Investigate. "Do you want us to issue a takedown?" Elena asked carefully. "We can have it removed under harassment policy. 10 minutes, max." I leaned back in my chair, watching the metrics climb in real time. "No," I said. "Ava, it's humiliating." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "It's not humiliating for me," I replied calmly. "It's clarifying for everyone else." Silence hung between us for a moment. "Let it stay up," I said. "Let it run. Let them watch. Let them study every frame and decide for themselves who the villains were." I ended the call with Elena and leaned back in my chair. The storyline had inverted. I wasn't the broke embarrassment anymore. Online, I had transformed into something far more compelling. The underestimated founder humiliated in public by her own family. The internet loves an underdog. It loves a reversal even more. The retweets multiplied by the second, numbers ticking upward like a jackpot counter. Their attempt at humiliation had collided with something they didn't understand. Scale. They wanted attention. Now they had global attention. Tuesday morning. Christopher was likely standing beneath the polished lights of timeless luxury, adjusting his cufflinks, scrolling through notifications with that self-satisfied grin. He probably thought the controversy would boost traffic, more visibility, more clients. What he didn't know was that over the weekend, Apex Ventures had been busy. We hadn't bought a watch. We had purchased a controlling interest in the holding company that owned his franchise rights. For Apex, it was minor, another quiet acquisition added to the portfolio. For me, it granted something very specific. Authority. Mid-morning, his manager approached him with an iPad in hand. "Corporate needs you on Zoom. Now." He must have assumed it was a compliance warning. Maybe even a promotion. Instead, he found himself staring at 3 faces on the screen. The regional director, an HR representative, and a third black square labeled simply, "Ownership." "Mr. Mercer," the director began crisply, "we've received thousands of formal complaints regarding a video you posted. The conduct displayed reflects serious brand damage and gross misconduct." "It's just family drama," Christopher rushed out. "A joke. It's being blown out of proportion." "There is nothing humorous about assault," HR replied evenly, "and nothing private about 4 million views." His termination was effective immediately. Security would escort him out. "You can't do this," he protested. That's when I unmuted. I left my camera off. "Your sister," I said calmly, my voice filling the showroom through the conference speakers, "is the majority shareholder of the company that issues your paycheck." The silence on the line thickened. "And she has a strict zero-tolerance policy for bullies." I paused. "Please pack your belongings. And leave the demo watch. It's no longer yours." Then I ended the meeting. One consequence delivered. Thursday. They came to my gate. Of course they did. When control slips from a narcissist's grasp, reflection isn't the first response. Retaliation is. There's a term for it. Narcissistic collapse. The illusion fractures, and instead of shame, what surfaces is fury. The mirror must be shattered. I watched them through the security monitors from my kitchen. Angela's leased luxury sedan idled aggressively at the iron gates of my property. 6 months earlier, I'd purchased the estate through an LLC. 20 wooded acres and a modern glass home hidden from the road, nearly invisible. They must have hired a private investigator to track it down. Angela leaned on the intercom buzzer, her face warped slightly by the lens. Christopher paced behind her, kicking gravel, jaw tight. He looked exhausted, like someone who just discovered consequences have weight. Open the gate, Angela shouted. The audio system transmitted her voice with crystal clarity. You manipulated us. You let us believe you were struggling. You lied. That was the new version of events. Not that they had publicly humiliated and burned me, but that I had committed the unforgivable crime of withholding my success. In their story, I wasn't the victim. I was the deceiver. In their version of reality, my success wasn't an achievement. It was treason. Because I hadn't handed it over. They felt entitled to the fortune they once mocked me for not having. We know you're in there, Ava. Christopher shouted into the security camera, his face filling my monitor. You owe me my job. You owe us. I pressed the intercom button, but didn't unlock the gate. You're trespassing on private property. The word trespassing seemed to ignite Angela. I am your mother, she screamed, voice splintering. You sit on millions while I'm wearing last season's coat. You let us struggle. You manipulative, ungrateful. I am not your daughter. I replied evenly, my voice flattened by the speaker system. I'm the selfish trash you poured coffee on. Remember? Christopher stepped forward again. Open the gate. We need to discuss compensation. You humiliated us in front of the world. We'll sue you for defamation. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. I answered calmly. And the video you filmed is my primary evidence. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement on the second monitor. A black SUV was rolling silently up the driveway behind their sedan. There's also a restraining order pending for assault, I added. The officers arriving behind you are here to serve it. Blue lights flickered across Angela's car. Christopher's aggression vanished instantly. Angela turned, saw the police cruiser, and her fury collapsed into something far less theatrical. Fear. Goodbye, I said. I cut the feed. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was engineered. Triple pane glass. Climate control humming softly. Safety purchased and installed. 2 weeks later, the fallout had hardened into permanence. Christopher couldn't find work in the city. The viral clip surfaced before his resume did. Amanda's sponsorships evaporated. Brands don't align with influencers who laugh at assault. Angela retreated from her social circles, unwilling to face the same terrace where she'd staged her performance. Consequences don't shout. They settle. I sat on my cabin deck, cool mountain air brushing against skin that was finally healing. My phone buzzed again. A lawyer. But not mine. It was Grandma Rose's attorney. She asked that you be informed immediately, he said. She has amended her will. The estate, the trust, the property, everything is being transferred to you. I don't need it, I replied quietly. She knows, he said. Her exact words were, give it to Ava. She's the only one who didn't need it. That's why she deserves it. After we hung up, I stared out at the treeline. I didn't feel victorious. I felt unburdened. The constant pressure of their expectations, their noise, their cruelty, gone. Like static cut from a frequency. I opened the family group chat one last time. No speeches. No final message. Just delete group. Then I whistled for my dog, grabbed my keys, and climbed into my truck. The rearview mirror reflected nothing but empty road. And ahead of me, wide open sky.